Look, we all know who Alexander the Great is, right? The kid who conquered basically the entire known world before he turned 30. The military genius who literally never lost a single battle. The guy who built an empire from Greece all the way to India in just 13 years. But here's what nobody talks about. Alexander didn't just die. He was murdered, poisoned, taken out at the absolute peak of his power when he was only 32 years old. Someone wanted him dead, and they wanted it done fast. So the real question isn't, how did he die? The question that should keep you up at night is, why? What was going on in Alexander's head that made his own people, his own generals, the guys who fought beside him for years, decide they had no choice but to kill him? Was he some kind of visionary trying to bring the world together? Or was he actually a threat to everything his people believed in? Because by the end of this video, you're gonna understand why Alexander the Great might have been the most dangerous genius who ever lived. And why, honestly, his death was almost inevitable. Let's get into it. Okay, so here's the thing about Alexander. He wasn't just another conqueror. There were plenty of kings running around taking land back then. What made Alexander different, what made him dangerous, was that he wanted to fundamentally change how the entire world worked. Think about where he came from. Alexander grew up as this Macedonian prince, right? He got tutored by Aristotle himself. He learned Greek philosophy, Greek culture, all that stuff. And the Greeks? Man, they thought they were better than everyone else. They literally called non-Greeks barbarians. It was simple in their minds. Greeks were civilized, sophisticated, smart. Everyone else? Inferior. End of story. But then something crazy happens. Alexander conquers Persia, this massive, ancient empire. And instead of just ruling over them like any normal conqueror would, something shifts in his brain. He doesn't just want to be their king. He wants to merge with them. He wants to create this whole new thing. A hybrid empire where Persians and Macedonians are equals. Can you imagine how that sounded to his people? This wasn't just revolutionary. This was terrifying to everyone around him. So what does Alexander do? He starts wearing Persian clothes. Full Persian royal outfit. He marries not one but multiple Persian princesses. Then, and this is where it gets wild, he organizes this absolutely massive wedding ceremony in Susa, where he forces 10,000 of his Macedonian soldiers to marry Persian women. Let that sink in for a second. He's not suggesting cultural exchange. He's not encouraging it. He's forcing it. He's making his men create mixed families, mixed bloodlines, mixed loyalties. These guys probably just wanted to go home, and here's Alexander basically saying, nope, you're marrying the enemy now. And it doesn't stop there. He starts bringing Persian nobles into his elite cavalry unit, the Companions. This unit had always been reserved for Macedonian aristocrats. It was their thing, their privilege, their status symbol, their identity. And Alexander just opens the door to the people they literally just defeated in battle. Then he tries to introduce this thing called proskynesis. It's a Persian custom where you bow down before the king. Now, to Persians, this was just showing respect. Normal stuff. But to Greeks and Macedonians? Oh man, this was worship. This was treating a human being like he's a god. His own men refused. Some of them straight up mocked him to his face. Alexander's childhood historian, this guy Callisthenes, spoke out against it publicly. You know what happened to him? He died in custody, probably executed, for disagreeing with the king. Now let's be really clear about what Alexander was actually doing here. He was threatening the entire power structure. Like, completely dismantling it. Put yourself in his general's shoes for a minute. These guys had fought for years. They'd bled on battlefields from Turkey all the way to Afghanistan. They'd watched their friends die. They'd earned their positions through loyalty and violence and surviving impossible odds. And now Alexander's telling them that Persians, the people they just defeated, the people who killed their brothers in battle, deserve equal status? That they should have the same power, the same privileges, the same rights? This wasn't just insulting. This was existentially dangerous to them. Because think about what it really meant. If Persians could be cavalry commanders, if Persians could be governors of provinces, if Persians could marry into Macedonian families and inherit land and titles, what happened to Macedonian supremacy? What happened to their kids, their families, their future power? Alexander's vision basically meant the end of Macedonian privilege. And here's the thing about privilege. It never, ever gives itself up quietly. The ancient historians are super clear about this. Arrian, Plutarch, Curtius Rufus, all of them mention the growing resentment bubbling up in Alexander's army. His men didn't understand him anymore. They thought he'd gone native. They genuinely believed he'd betrayed his own people. And honestly, maybe they were right to be scared, because Alexander wasn't stopping. He had plans to conquer Arabia next, then explore Africa, push even further into India. There was literally no end in sight. And with every new conquest, he'd integrate more foreign troops, adopt more foreign customs, dilute Macedonian culture just a little bit more. Now, his general Parmenion, this old veteran, one of his father's most trusted commanders, he starts questioning Alexander's decisions. Parmenion's like, hey, maybe we should stop after defeating Persia. Take all this wealth and go home. We won. Alexander refuses, not interested. Then Parmenion's son Philotas gets accused of conspiracy. Alexander has him executed. But here's where it gets really dark. Alexander then orders Parmenion himself to be assassinated. This is a 70-year-old man who's overseeing the treasury in a city hundreds of miles away. No trial, no chance to defend himself, just elimination, cold-blooded murder. This sent a crystal-clear message to everyone. Question Alexander, and you die. But it also revealed something else. Alexander was becoming paranoid. Really paranoid. And paranoid kings? They make fatal mistakes. So Alexander's entire reign becomes this series of conspiracies. Some real, some probably imagined, all of them bloody. In 330 BC, while they're in Afghanistan, Alexander learns about a plot. Some guy named Dimnus allegedly planned to assassinate him. The information comes through Philotas, Parmenion's son. But here's the thing, Philotas doesn't immediately tell Alexander about it. Maybe he didn't think it was credible? Maybe he was actually involved? We don't really know. What we do know is that Alexander puts Philotas on trial in front of the whole Macedonian army. And under torture, yeah, they tortured him. Philotas confesses to knowing about the plot. The army finds him guilty. They stone him to death right there. Macedonian tradition. But Alexander doesn't stop. Even though Parmenion is hundreds of miles away, even though he's 70 years old, even though he's served Alexander's father Philip for decades and been instrumental in every single major victory, Alexander sends assassins to murder him. No trial, nothing. Just a death sentence based on his son's tortured confession. Can you imagine the fear this created? If Parmenion, legendary Parmenion, could be killed like that, then anyone could be next. Later on, Alexander's own royal pages plot to kill him. These are teenage boys who literally just attend to the king. They get caught, tortured, executed. His court historian Callisthenes gets implicated and dies in custody. Then there's the incident with Clitus the Black. Now, Clitus had saved Alexander's life at the Battle of Granicus. They were friends. But during this drunken dinner party, Clitus starts criticizing Alexander. He's drunk, Alexander's drunk, everybody's drunk. And Clitus just goes off. He accuses Alexander of forgetting Macedonian values, of becoming too Persian, of thinking he's divine, better than everyone else, above all the men who actually did the fighting. Alexander, absolutely wasted and furious, grabs a spear and kills him. Just stabs his loyal friend to death in a drunken rage, right there at the dinner table. The army later passes some decree posthumously convicting Clitus of treason, probably just to make Alexander feel better about murdering his friend. But everyone knew the truth. Everyone saw what happened. These incidents tell us everything we need to know. Alexander was brilliant, sure, absolutely genius-level military mind. But he was also volatile, paranoid, and increasingly isolated from reality. He trusted no one. And guess what? No one trusted him either. But here's what actually makes Alexander truly dangerous. It's not his army. It's not his military genius. It's not even his paranoia. It's his ideas. Alexander believed in something that was completely radical for his time. That different peoples could actually live together as equals. That culture could be shared, not just dominated. That empire didn't have to mean crushing everyone under your boot. He founded over 20 cities, most of them named Alexandria. But these weren't just military outposts. They were cultural hubs. Places where Greeks, Persians, Indians, Egyptians could all trade together, marry each other, share ideas. He was literally creating a network of cosmopolitan centers across the entire ancient world. And get this, He let conquered peoples keep their customs, their religions, their local leaders. Persian nobles became satraps ruling provinces. Egyptian priests were honored and respected. He sacrificed to local gods. He wasn't trying to erase these cultures like every other conqueror. He was trying to incorporate them into something bigger. This policy, historians sometimes call it the policy of fusion, was completely unprecedented. Previous conquerors just extracted wealth and imposed their will by force. Do what we say or die. Simple. But Alexander? Alexander was trying to build something genuinely new. A multi-ethnic, multicultural empire held together not just by military force but by shared identity, by the idea that we're all part of the same human project. And this absolutely terrified his Macedonian elite. Because think about what it meant if Alexander actually succeeded, if this vision actually worked. It would mean the end of Greek exceptionalism, the end of clear ethnic hierarchies, the end of bloodline determining your worth. It would mean a world where a Persian could be just as powerful as a Macedonian, where what you could do mattered more than where you came from. In ancient times, this was incomprehensible to most people. Your identity was your ethnicity, your city, your tribe. That was everything. The idea of a cosmopolitan empire of equals? That was dangerous. That threatened the entire social order that people had built their lives around. Now, some historians argue Alexander wasn't idealistic. He was practical. That he adopted Persian customs because he needed Persian support to actually rule such a massive territory. That the marriages and military integration were just smart politics to prevent rebellions. Maybe they're right. But you know what? The effect was exactly the same. Alexander was creating a new world order. And old worlds, they don't go quietly into the night, they fight back. So now we get to June 323 BC Babylon, the palace of Nebuchadnezzar. Alexander's at another banquet. He's drinking heavily. He's been drinking a lot more ever since his closest friend Hephaestion died the year before. Suddenly, in the middle of the party, he cries out in pain, grabs his stomach. People rush to help him. He's got a fever. They get him to bed. Over the next 13 days, his condition just gets worse and worse. High fever, severe abdominal pain, weakness, then partial paralysis. He slips in and out of consciousness. His generals all gather around his bedside. They ask him the critical question, who should succeed you? Who gets the empire? Alexander's answer is unclear. Some sources say he whispered to the strongest. Others say he couldn't even speak at all, just made a gesture toward his signet ring. On June 13, 323 BC, Alexander the Great dies. He's 32 years old. Now here's something weird. For 6 days after his death, his body shows absolutely no signs of decomposition. To the ancient Greeks, this proved he was divine, a god among men. But to modern forensic experts, this might mean something completely different. He might not have actually been dead yet. Just paralyzed, trapped in his own body, aware but unable to move or speak. There's a condition called pseudothanatos, false death. Imagine being conscious but unable to tell anyone you're still alive. But the real question everyone wants answered is, what actually killed him? The ancient sources mention poisoning. Diodorus, Plutarch, Justin, Arrian, they all talk about it. The alleged plot involved Antipater, Alexander's regent back in Macedonia. Antipater had been summoned to Babylon, and everyone kind of understood why. He was probably going to be replaced, maybe even executed. He knew Alexander's temper. He'd seen what happened to Parmenion, to Philotas, to Clitus. He knew how this story ended. According to the theory, Antipater sent his son Aeolus, who just happened to be Alexander's wine pourer, perfect position for a poisoner, to do the job. Some versions even say Aristotle was involved. Alexander's old teacher allegedly provided the poison. The poison itself? Possibly white hellebore. The Greeks used it medicinally, but in large doses it's absolutely lethal. And it matches Alexander's symptoms perfectly: the prolonged illness over days, the abdominal pain, the progressive paralysis. Modern toxicologists have studied this scenario. It's completely plausible. Another theory suggests water from the river Styx. Sounds mythological, right? But this water actually contained calicheamicin, a bacterial toxin. It could dissolve in wine, would take several days to kill someone, would cause multiple organ failure. Again, matches the symptoms. But here's the problem with proving ancient poisoning. No body, no autopsy, just written accounts, many of them written centuries after the fact. Alexander's tomb disappeared sometime in history. Some people think it's in Macedonia. Others say Alexandria, Egypt. Some say it never left Babylon. Nobody actually knows for sure. So was Alexander murdered? Yeah, probably. I mean, the circumstances are just too convenient, right? Too many people had a really good reason to want him dead. Too many people had the opportunity. And Alexander had made way too many enemies. But here's the deeper truth that really matters. Even if he died of natural causes, malaria, typhoid fever, alcohol poisoning, whatever medical condition you want to name, his death was inevitable anyway. Not because of disease, because of his ideas. Alexander was trying to do something impossible. He was trying to unite people who fundamentally didn't want to be united. He was forcing Macedonians to see Persians as equals, forcing soldiers to marry foreign women they probably resented, forcing aristocrats to share power with the very people they'd just conquered in battle. You can't force people into enlightenment. You can't impose tolerance from the top down with an iron fist. Alexander had all the military power in the world to conquer an empire, but he didn't have the political or cultural power to actually change hearts and minds. You can't legislate that kind of transformation. His generals saw this happening. They watched him become more Persian every day, more isolated from his own people, more paranoid about everyone around him. They watched him execute friends and trusted allies on the slightest suspicion. They watched him plan new campaigns that would drag them even further from home, deeper into unknown territories. And they made a calculation, a cold, brutal calculation. With Alexander alive, this empire was going to tear itself apart anyway. His policies would lead to civil war eventually. Macedonians would rebel against Persian influence. The whole thing would collapse into chaos. So maybe they actively killed him, or maybe they just let him die. Didn't try too hard to save him. Either way, the result was exactly the same. Within a year of Alexander's death, his empire erupted into massive civil war. His generals, the Diadochi, the successors, spent 40 years fighting each other for control. They carved his empire into 3 separate kingdoms. Macedonian supremacy got restored. The policy of fusion, completely abandoned. Alexander's vision died with him. But here's the thing that's actually crazy. Even though Alexander failed, even though his political project collapsed, his ideas survived. The Hellenistic period he created lasted for centuries. Greek culture spread across the entire known world. The cities he founded became incredible centers of learning and culture. The concept of cosmopolitanism, of cultural exchange, of universal human worth. These ideas echoed through history all the way to today. Alexander was dangerous because he saw what could be, what might be possible. A world without rigid tribal boundaries. A world where your ability and character mattered more than your birthright. A world where different peoples could coexist as equals, sharing culture and building something together. That vision threatened everyone who benefited from the old world order. Every aristocrat whose power came from their bloodline. Every general whose status came from ethnic privilege. Every person who needed someone else to be beneath them. So they silenced him. They had to, but they couldn't silence the idea. That's the thing about ideas, they're immortal. You can kill the person, but the thought, it spreads, it evolves, it comes back. And that's why Alexander remains the most dangerous genius in history. Not because of what he actually accomplished, not because of the battles he won or the territory he conquered, but because of what he tried to accomplish. And because, honestly, we're still fighting about the exact same questions today in our modern world. Was he a hero or a villain? A visionary or a tyrant? Was he trying to unite humanity, or was he just another conqueror with a god complex who wanted to be worshipped? Maybe he was all of those things. Maybe that's what makes genius truly dangerous. It's never simple, never clean, never easy to categorize.